What was your moment with Jesus?
Well, Jeff, I was really lost in my life. I was 17 years old. I was living at home. My family were believers in God, and I didn't really feel the same way they did. And I felt like I was lost. I felt like God had abandoned me in some ways, and I didn't know if God really existed. And so when I was in my room by myself where no one else could see me, I asked God, I said, God, are you real? Are you the same God that I've been reading about, the God of Abraham, who walked and talked with him, the God of Moses, who spoke to him through a burning bush, the God of Jacob, who wrestled with him? I said, God, if you're that same God, I want you to show yourself to me in the same way. I can't just go on with my life pretending that I believe in God when I really didn't. And that was my moment.
Wow. So take me back to a little bit of your history, because your history is very unique, and your family's history. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are surprised, especially when I first came to Israel for visiting, and they would say, you know, you don't look Jewish. And I said, yeah, I'm from Iran. And people are surprised. There's Iranian Jews. Now, this was 24 years ago. Now it's a little bit more common. They're used to seeing Iranian Jews. But on top of that, my family are believers in Jesus. And so it's very uncommon to hear about that. And in fact, my great-great-great-grandfather was the first one in my family to come to faith in Jesus. And he didn't, you know, he didn't have an expectation about Jesus. He was a leader in the synagogue in Iran growing up. And one day, a Christian missionary came to the door at the synagogue, and while my great-great-grandfather was greeting people at the door, he came to him and he said, Shalom, did you know that the Messiah has come and his name is Yeshua, Jesus? And my great-great-grandfather just looked at him, and he slapped him in the face and kicked him out of the synagogue.
You kidding?
He didn't want to have anything to do with Jesus. He'd heard the name before, but he didn't want to have anything to do with him. And so the missionary, who is from England or from Russia, there were missionaries a lot in Iran at that time, he waited outside respectfully. He kind of learned his lesson. And after the service was over, he asked some people, where does that guy live? They said, oh, he just lives across the street. So the next day, he went to my great-great-great-grandfather's home. He knocked on the door. And because of Iranian hospitality, my grandfather welcomed him into the home, served him some tea. They got to talking, and he shared more about why he believed Jesus was the Jewish Messiah. And the missionary kept coming back, knocking on the door, taking advantage of the hospitality, and he eventually got to hear more about Jesus and realized he really did believe that Jesus was the Jewish Messiah. And not only him, but his whole family came to faith. Wow. And so if we fast forward 100 years, I was born in Tehran, Iran, but I was only 3 months old when the Islamic Revolution broke out. And so my family knew that Islam was not good for the Jewish people. And so we fled and we moved to Los Angeles. And so I grew up in Los Angeles, and my parents helped to start a congregation of people who believed in Jesus with a leader who was formerly Muslim.
Wow.
And so growing up, my congregation were Iranian former Muslims who had come to faith in Jesus, and the other half were Iranian Jews who had also come to faith in Jesus. In my congregation growing up in Los Angeles, there was a lot of that came through, where all the things that we brought from Judaism or that some brought from Islam, they were recognizing that they needed to lay those things down before Jesus. And Jesus was the one that was able to bring peace among the people. And so we could see, and that's what I saw, was that reconciliation among Muslims and Jews that would come to faith in Jesus. And it was something that was very unique. And so I could sense the genuine nature of that.
So you and your family are in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And you were raised there. What was the environment like growing up with your family?
Well, so having that congregation was really important. It was a way for us to have that cultural identity. And a lot of my cousins also moved to Los Angeles. So we had kind of a community of Iranian Jewish believers in Jesus. And so I got to see that. But I also got to see the multicultural aspect of Los Angeles. You know, I grew up going to public schools. And so I got to see what it was like to be Jewish, to be Muslim, to be Christian, to be Hindu, to be all the different races that were melting in Los Angeles like a melting pot. They were all there. And so I had all of these different influences in my life. My parents took me to congregation. We got to learn about Jesus. They would teach us about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They would teach us the stories of the Hebrew scriptures. They would teach us about the prophecies. They would teach us the Psalms. We read the New Testament. We learned about Jesus. And so all of these things were competing in my life. I would go to public school and I would hear people telling me God doesn't exist. You know, they would tell me, you know, we know that God doesn't exist because we found out that evolution can prove that God doesn't exist. And so I had these competing ideas in my life, and I felt like it was pulling at my soul that I wasn't sure if I believed in God. I wasn't sure if I believed, and on top of that, I didn't want to believe just because my parents told me this is what it says, or just because the scriptures said so. I wanted to know for myself, for sure. And so after a while of just kind of, you know, going along with the crowd, doing what my parents said, when I was about 17 years old, I decided, you know what, I really need to know for myself. And people were challenging me. People in my high school were challenging me, saying, look, don't believe in God. It's more fun not to believe in God. You can do whatever you want. And I said, well, that sounds appealing. But then I saw the genuine faith of my parents, of other people, and I saw, wow, they really feel God's love. They have peace in their lives. They're different than the rest of the world. And I said, I want that too, but I wasn't sure. And so I decided, you know, I really need to find out. And so what I did is I started asking people that I knew, how do you know that God exists? How do you know that it's true? And they said, you know what? Everybody has to find out for themselves. And so that's what I started doing. I started to pray to God directly. I said, God, if you're real, show yourself to me. And I started to read the scriptures for myself. Is Jesus really the Messiah? Is he really who he said he was? And I would go through the Hebrew prophecies, and I would look through the New Testament, and I'd read them and compare and contrast. But at the same time, I still wanted to know in my heart and my soul that it was true. People were helping me here and there, but it came to a crux when I was going into my senior year in high school. I was 17 years old, and my friend called me up out of the blue in the summer, and he said, look, Emmanuel, I want to start a Bible study at our school. Will you help me do that? And at this point, I was thinking, I'm not very popular as it is at high school. And I'm pretty good at kind of like going under the radar, not getting in trouble with gangs, not associating with all the unpopular kids. I was kind of, floating around. And I said, if I tell people that I'm a follower of Jesus, no one is going to want to hang out with me. And I'll just be ostracized. And I thought, is that really what I want? Do I really believe that God is who he says he is? And he said, you know what, Emmanuel, just pray about it. Pray about it and we'll talk later. And I said, okay, I can do that. That's not hard. And I kind of like shrugged it off and said, I won't really pray about it. I'll just tell him that I'll pray about it. But I said, you know what, this is a good challenge. I wanted to know if God exists. And so I said, okay, God, show yourself to me and prove to me that you are who you say you are. And I started reading the scriptures, like I said, and looking through those things. And I asked that question. I said, God, you revealed yourself to Abraham. You promised to him promises that you would make a nation out of him. And you spoke to Moses through a burning bush. And you even wrestled with Jacob. I said, if you can do those things with them, then you can do them with me. So I kept wrestling and kept thinking about it. And my friend, and the school year was coming up, my friend called me up and said, Emmanuel, what's your answer? Are you gonna help or not? And I still wasn't sure. I said, okay, God, let's do this. We'll go to school. First day of school, on the first class, we need to get a sponsor to sponsor our club, a teacher. And I said, okay, I'm gonna go to my first class, first day of school, my first teacher, and just ask them straight out. And so I did that. It was a brand new teacher. It was their first day at school, and for them too. And I walked up to her and I said, hi, my name is Emmanuel. I'm a follower of Jesus. And I'd like to start a Bible study club. Would you sponsor our club? And she said, sure. I'm a follower of Jesus too. I'd love to help sponsor that club. And I was like, you would? Okay, now we need to really try this and do it. I said, okay, God, that was the first test. Let's do it again. So we needed all these different things to get our club going and all the approvals and everything just fell in place, one after the other after the other. And I said, okay, this is really happening. And we're going to be teaching people the Bible. And I better really believe it.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I had these dreams at night that I felt like I was separated from God. I felt like I couldn't connect with God. And it was really troubling. I would wake up in the morning knowing that in my heart, I was not living a life that was pleasing to God, that I was doing one thing and living another way, and pretending to be a good person, but in my heart, I knew that I wasn't. And so I really sat down and said, you know what is it that makes me a believer in Jesus? And I asked my youth leader, I said, what is it? And he said, you know what, Emmanuel, I know that you don't want to believe in God out of fear. You don't want to believe in God because, you're going to go to hell. You don't want to believe that. And I said, yeah, that's right. I don't want to believe that. He said, you know what you need to do to believe in Jesus? I said, no. He said, all you need to do is confess in your heart that Jesus is Lord and tell other people, confess to other people, and you'll be saved. And I said, is that simple? He said, yeah, it's that simple. And so I prayed that moment. I prayed with him and I said, yeah, I believe. And as soon as I made that prayer, I felt like my soul was unburdened, that I was feeling like I had hope in my life again. And I knew that all the things that I read in the scriptures were true. Somehow, some way, I just knew it.
Yeah.
God gave me faith because I trusted him.
Wow.
That I opened my heart to him.
Wow.
And that changed me from the inside out. And from then on, I was able to talk to people about my faith in God. I was able to tell other people about it. And I knew that it was true. And the more I wrestled, the more I asked God to reveal himself to me. He still hadn't spoken to me. He'd done these tiny miracles that, were more than coincidences. But I said, there's these miracles you did in the Bible. When are you going to do those for me? And so I was sitting in a Bible study one day, and I was kind of, drifting off, and I was thinking, it'd be great to play basketball after this. There's a basketball hoop out there. I'm looking forward to that. And as the study came to a close, I was sitting there, and I was thinking, what's going on? Something's happening. I can't think straight anymore. And people were getting up and going to get, tea and refreshments. And I'm sitting there thinking, why can't I move? Something's happening. People would come up and talk to me, Emmanuel, let's go play basketball. I said, no, something's happening, hold on. And so I just sat there in the stillness and listened. I said, maybe God's trying to talk to me. And so I listened. I couldn't hear anything. I was thinking, I couldn't think straight. I was just sitting there. And then after a few minutes, I realized God had taken my thoughts away. And I realized that I was thinking about other things, thinking about basketball, thinking about when the meeting was going to end. And those weren't bad things necessarily. But God was saying, if you're listening to me, you'll hear me. And he didn't say anything, but all of this I understood somehow. And I said, wow, God, you spoke to me. How did that work? But once I realized that I could quiet my heart and listen to God, then I knew that whenever I asked for help, that God would answer. Some way, somehow, he'd given me that faith. And so that was really the turning point for me to be able to trust God with those situations.
Wow. I had the chills when you were talking about how God changed you, because a lot of people look for a different life. I'm going to change my ways, therefore I'm going to feel better, I'm going to have more purpose if I do these things. But what you were describing is a change that God did in you. You didn't make the change that happened to you. He changed you, which is one of the most striking differences between legalistic religion or even just trying to become a better person to try to make it into heaven. and God coming down and doing the work. God coming down to Abraham, coming down to Jacob, coming down to Moses, coming down to Emmanuel, and doing that work in your heart. And that's what it means by being born again. You getting that spirit, you becoming a new creation. And when you said that, it gave me the chills, because the same thing happened to me and to the multitudes of Jewish people that are coming to faith right now. It's incredible. So what are you doing today?
Yeah, so now, over the years, I got involved with a missionary organization called Jews for Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really exciting for me because, it started out, I saw a Jews for Jesus missionary on my college campus. And I said, you know what? I'm Jewish. I believe in Jesus. What do you guys do? Let me help you out. And one thing led to another. I got involved with the organization. I saw that they really care about the Jewish people, that they want them to see that Jesus is the Jewish Messiah. And I said, that's something worth working for. And so a lot of different things happened over my life. I went on outreaches with Jews for Jesus, and that's how I met my wife, Sarah. And so over time, we eventually got married and have kids, and we have 3 kids now. And I really wanted to do something with my life that was helping other people. And so that's why I got involved with Jews for Jesus. And eventually I started working on their website and on social media. And I was trying to find, how can I share with people the hope that I've been given?
Yeah.
And so that kind of led me step by step. And to this point now, I help with the chat on our website, because we get millions of people that come to the Jews for Jesus website every year, and they have questions.
Yeah.
They've heard about Jesus, but they don't know who to ask. They don't know where to go.
Right. And they might not want to expose themselves as well.
And so they don't know who to talk to. And so they'll come up to our website, and we have a chat that pops up and says, hi, what brings you here today? And people say, I don't know. I heard about Jesus, but I don't know who he is.
Yeah.
And so we have opportunities to talk to them. And we understand, as being Jewish, we understand the difficulty of believing in Jesus, that Jewish people say you can't be Jewish and believe in Jesus. And we say, why not? Jesus was Jewish, and he came with a message for the Jewish people. But we haven't heard that message. Our Jewish people haven't heard that message. And so our goal is to give people the opportunity to engage with it, to ask those questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. I wasn't afraid. I asked all those questions of God. Anything someone asked me, said, you know what, evolution is true. I said, okay, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Let's go read in the scriptures and understand, what is it? And the hope that God gives us when we ask questions, it helps build our faith. And so that's what we encourage people to do. We want to walk alongside with other people and let them make that journey for themselves. We don't want to tell people what to believe.
Wonderful.
Or to force people to believe something that's not true. We just want them to say, God, you show yourself. You prove whether it's true. If Jesus is who he says he is, show me. And it's been wonderful to be able to do that and encourage people.
What an incredible story. 5 generations of Iranian Jewish believers in Jesus. I'm touched, and I hope you're touched as well. I also want to give a shout out for Jews for Jesus. Go to the website, jewsforjesus.org. You can see the live chat pop up. You can reach out to us anonymously. I also serve with Jews for Jesus. I also want to just recommend to go to the Jews for Jesus YouTube channel, where we have conversations with Jewish believers in Jesus from all over the world, from different backgrounds and cultures. Jewish people, scientists, scholars, mothers that live at home with their kids. Amazing stories you can also check out on the Jews for Jesus YouTube channel. So thank you for watching. Leave your comments for Emmanuel. If you have questions, you can actually go to the live chat and ask him. So God bless you all, and may you all find peace and hope in our Messiah, Yeshua. Stay tuned for some more amazing testimonies. God bless you.